Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting. My name is Councillor Katie Dye, and I will be chairing this meeting of the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. Could I remind everyone that today's meeting is being live streamed on the Leeds City Council YouTube channel so that the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. Can I please ask members to introduce themselves, and can I remind you to mute your microphone when you've finished speaking? So we're going to go round and do members of the committee first, and then we'll come round to everybody else. So we'll start there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor James Gibson. I represent Crossgates and Whinmoor Ward, and I'm the Executive Member for Environment.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mahmid Shahzad for the Moortown and Meanwood Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Conrad Hart-Brooke, Councillor for Rothwell, and I shall sit here quietly till it's my turn to speak.
David Dresser, Councillor for Killingbeck and Seacroft.
Penny Stables, Councillor for Wetherby Ward.
Norma Harrington, Councillor for Wetherby Ward, substituting for Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, everybody. So now we'll do introductions for council officers. So shall we start over there?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Toby Russell, Clerk for the committee.
Good afternoon. Polly Kirk, Chief Officer, Climate, Energy and Green Spaces.
Good afternoon, Rachel Waterhouse, Policy Officer for Climate, Energy and Green Spaces.
Thank you. And we're going to run through some formalities for the meeting, and then we'll get to the open forum slot, and we will ask everybody who's joined us to introduce themselves then. Okay. So, Toby, do you want to run through the first few items?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So, item number 1 is appeals. We have no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Item number 2 is exempt information. We have no exempt information on today's agenda, which would require the exclusion of the press and the public. Item number 3 is late items, and we have no formal late items on today's agenda. Item number 4, can I ask members to declare any interest they may have? No, thank you. I'll take silence as none. And item number 5, apologies for absence. So we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Bromley and Councillor Cohen, and we have Councillor Norma Harrington acting as substitute for Councillor Cohen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And the next item is to go through the minutes of the previous meeting. So they were sent out to you in your pack, starting on page 7. So what I usually do is go through page by page, and I give people an opportunity to raise any matters arising or to ask any questions about the minutes, and then we will agree them. So first of all, page 7. Page 8. So just a comment from me on page 8. In the paragraph about the Eco Council who came to our open forum from Burley St Matthias, they invited us to visit, and I did go on a visit. Councillor Rowntree came with me, and we had a really nice time being shown around the school by their fabulous eco committee and learning about all the things they'd done. And I just have a reminder for you that those of you who were on the committee at that time, the head teacher asked if anybody would be willing to contribute to any seeds for their wildflowers that they were trying to grow. And she emailed me this week just to remind me that we'd said we might be able to do that. So if anybody is happy to contribute towards some wildflower seeds, let me know, and then I will pass that on to the head teacher. Okay, page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12, page 13, page 14. So just another comment from me that if you look at the third bullet point, we agreed to write a letter following the discussion about Leeds College of Building, and I did that. So I sent it to the Skills Minister, and when I get a response, I will share it with members of the committee. Page 15 and page 16. Okay, so those of us who were there, happy to agree those as a true record of the meeting? Thank you very much. Right, okay, so just by way of a few introductory comments to people who've joined us today for Open Forum and to new members of the committee, the idea of this committee is that we are tasked with making recommendations about climate change and sustainability. So that's what the business of our committee is about. The next slot we're going to go to is Open Forum, and just to let new members of the committee know, what we usually do is invite organisations and groups to come and have a slot. We can have up to 3 slots at each meeting, and you are all welcome to invite people along. However, rather confusingly, for the first meeting of the municipal year, we're doing things a little bit differently this year because we have this meeting because we have a cluster of schools from Morley, all of whom wanted to come and talk to us. So they're taking the whole of the Open Forum slot, and we're going to have a presentation by 4 young people, and then some of the young people have got questions for us, and they will be given some time to ask the question, for which they will receive a written response after the meeting. So, would you like to go round the table and introduce yourself? So maybe say your name and the school you're from. So we can only hear from people who have a card in, who are the people who are going to speak. But is it okay, Helen, to do a little bit of running around? So when you've got a card, you should have a little green light near your card, and that means that it's good to go and you can push your button to speak. So just say your name and your school, please.
I'm Mia Duram, and I'm from Chorley Primary Academy. I'm Emily Smith, and I'm from Chorley Primary Academy. My name's Louis Holmes, and I'm from Fountain Primary School.
My name's Sunshine Naveen, and I'm from Fountain Primary School.
My name's Eva, and I'm from Birchfield Primary School.
My name's Henry Harrison, and I'm from Birchfield Primary School.
My name's Freddie Davis, and I'm from Birchfield Primary School.
My name's Ayat Salim, and I'm from Morley Victoria Primary School.
My name's Eliza Smithson, and I'm from Morley Victoria Primary School.
My name is Tegvia from Morley Victoria Primary School.
My name is Isabel from Morley Victoria Primary School.
My name is Oscar Carey, and I'm from Seven Hills Primary School.
My name is Anna Ma, and I'm from Seven Hills Primary School.
My name is Freya Foran, and I'm from Asquith Primary School.
My name is Jessica Vera, and I'm from Asquith Primary School.
Thank you, everybody. That was really well done. I'm sure it's a little bit nerve-wracking to speak into that microphone for the first time. So we're now going to hand over to the 4 young people sitting at the end who are going to do a presentation to us. So I'm sure you know who starts and how it's going to go, so I'll leave it all to you. Thank you.
The earth is our home, our only home. It keeps us alive. Because of this, we need to give something back to Mother Nature. At Morley Victoria, we have created a group called the Eco Warriors. As the Eco Warriors, we have teamed up with other groups in school, such as our own school council, to help prevent climate change. We have been showing this on numerous occasions just in this school year. For example, we have taken a visit to the Leeds RERF, which stands for Recycling and Energy Recovery Facility, and learned all about how rubbish can turn into energy for the whole of Leeds if we treat it right. Then we shared that information to the rest of the school during assemblies, and later on we weighed the whole school's food waste and then documented it so we could see how much we throw away and what we can do to help.
In February this year, when we visited the RERF, we learned about what happened beyond the wheelie bins and after the beep of the bin truck leaving our homes. As soon as we got to school and registered, we hopped onto the coach and waved goodbye to our classmates as we were on the move. When we arrived at our destination, we took a few sneaky pictures and got greeted very kindly and with open arms. After trudging some very pungent set of stairs, we reached our destination, the recycling classroom. At first we sat down, waiting for our tour guide, but when we saw the giant claw, it was a completely different story. We raced over and couldn't get our eyes off it. When our tour guide arrived, we managed to sit back down and watch the PowerPoint she had created. The next step was that we played a little game where we decided which rubbish was recyclable and which wasn't. Then we had a wander around the building and watched the living wall from its balcony. After placing our ecological goals with the rest on the drawn tree, we headed back to the classroom for the VR experience. Then we headed back to school just in time for lunch.
The other things we did for Planet Earth were all inside of school. Not long after our trip to RERF, we managed to secure a position inside of an assembly, which is when we told the remainder of Upper Key Stage 2 what we learned back in February. Something else we told them is what we were doing over the next couple of weeks is that we were measuring the school's food waste. Because we were taking it in turns between year groups, when the clipboard was eventually handed to us, we were surprised at some of the results. One day it was almost 100 kilograms. Another earth-friendly activity we performed inside of school was going round the different classrooms, including the computer room and staff room, seeing which components were planet-friendly and which needed to be changed.
You don't have to be in a big project to give a helping hand to nature. You can help at home by recycling. Instead of throwing plastic bottles away, some fun ideas could be to maybe even turn it into a pencil case and decorate it with fun designs, or simply use it as a water bottle again. It doesn't have to be a single-use plastic. If you don't want to be, thank you for listening to Molly Victoria's ideas and perspective on this subject, and goodbye.
Thank you. I think you did an amazing job, and there aren't many people who come to open forum and get a round of applause from the committee, so you are doing a great job, and it's really wonderful to hear about all the work that's going on in your school, but also the tips for all of us that we can all take away from that. So thank you very much. We're now going to move on to people who wanted to ask us a question, and the way this part of the committee works is you are welcome to do that, but we don't have time in this session for us to discuss and answer it now. But what we're going to do is make a note of each question, and after the meeting we will make sure that you all get a written answer to the question that you've asked. So shall we go round from this side? Do you want to put your hand up if you're one of the schools that wants to ask a question? There you go. So do you want to start with your question? Thank you.
How do you think you'll change public transport to edit how much pollution is happening?
What a fabulous question. I've got that noted down. Thank you. Who's next?
What exactly is climate change?
Another great question. one for our science-minded team to get to grips with, I think. That one, brilliant. Next one.
Can climate change really affect our Earth?
Thank you. Another great question. Who's next? Can you make your card work and then say it again, and then we'll get a record of it?
Is climate change the same as global warming?
Is climate change the same as global warming? Super. Okay, another great sciencey one. Who is next?
Due to temperature rising, what can we do to help the school's hot environment?
Fabulous. That's a really important question, especially seeing as we've had some really hot times in schools over the last week or so. Anybody else want to ask a question?
How is climate change affecting the planet right now?
Fabulous. Thank you.
Why are bin days normally only one day a week when they could collect them all in just one day?
That's a question that's really interesting, and I think there'll be a lot of people saying we can tell you exactly why, but we'll get you a great answer to that one. Any more? If anybody hasn't asked a question and you would like to, even if somebody else from your school has asked one, you would be very welcome to ask one.
Do you think that there will be a time where you will only be able to purchase electric vehicles?
Fabulous. Another really good question. Anybody else?
If there was a way to change climate change, what would be the different system to help it?
Brilliant. Any more? Okay, well, can I thank you for such really perceptive, interesting and knowledgeable questions. I think some of them are going to take some answering. I see a few people smiling and thinking they've got a lot of work to do ahead of them, but we will get you an answer to all of those questions at some point after the meeting. So thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate you taking your time and having the courage to come and talk to us today. So you are welcome to observe part of the meeting if you like, but if you can make your way away from the table back to those seats, that would be super. Thank you so much for coming. So thank you for joining us, Rosa and Millie. I'm going to give you a minute to sort yourselves out in terms of presentations. Just let me know when you're ready. Right, so we're now moving on to item 8, and for new members of the committee, we work on a kind of a theme-based agenda in terms of each of the meetings. So you'll see as the cycle of meetings rolls on that we'll have different themes and we'll invite different people to address us on that theme. So the theme for this meeting is climate and resilience throughout the city, and we've invited Rosa Foster and Millie Duncan, who are Director and Programme Manager for the Leeds Climate Commission, to present to us. So if you would like to introduce yourselves and then just start when you're ready. Thank you so much.
Okay, just to say thank you very much for having us here today. It's lovely to be with you all. So I'm Rosa Foster and I'm Director of the Leeds Climate Commission. I'm also Director of the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, and our team is hosted by the University of Leeds as part of its civic leadership across the city and across the region. Over to you, Millie.
Yep. Hi everyone, Millie Duncan. I'm the Programme Manager for the Leeds Climate Commission, but also spend a bit of my time working with the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission as well. Thank you.
Okay, so today we're going to recognise there's been some membership change in SEAC, so we do come at least once a year to give updates and insights into what we're doing across the city. So we thought we'd do a quick introduction to the Commission and what it is, bring you up to speed on what we've been doing across at a regional scale in terms of strategic planning, and then really hone in on what we've been doing across Leeds and what our plan is for the future, with a view to seeking your steer and insights and feedback and so on into that work programme as it's developing. Oh, gone too fast. Do apologise. Okay, so briefly then, our journey. So the Leeds Climate Commission was established in 2017, and it was set up in response to and as part of having been inspired by the UK's Climate Change Committee. So it's really, it was my predecessor helped set it up with colleagues at the council, and it was recognising that in order to mobilise action and change with the pace that was needed, we needed to work together differently and slightly and to share academic learning and just accelerate all of the traditional processes that help inform policy and development and delivery, but try and accelerate that through building a collaborative approach to that work. Leeds was established in 2017. It's the first of its kind. As a result of the success of that work, we were involved with a collaboration with London School of Economics that championed and led a 5-year programme that sort of sought to lift the Leeds model and adapt that across 2 other cities, so Belfast and Edinburgh, working with the universities there, and obviously the municipal councils and so on. And then it led to the formation of a further 20 commissions or very similar partnerships across the UK, one of which was the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission as well. That was launched in 2021 with the full support of the Yorkshire Leaders Board and the Mayor at the time. There's now 4, there was 1 then, the changing landscape. And so Leeds has been going for some time. In 2023, we did a strategic review of the Commission to see how it was going and recheck the sort of commissioner population and to develop clear projects and initiatives through 2024. And then through the last year, we've run a number of core projects. Some have gone really well, some have been a bit trickier, but also in 2025, we were invited or asked to become the lead convener for the Resilient City ambition. And so we've been working really closely with colleagues across the council to work out quite what that means and how we can play our leading role. So that's just a snapshot. I'm happy to take any questions on this stuff as well. Okay, so update then. Millie came in January to the committee and gave an update then on the detailed work programme. We've been doing a commission strategy reset across both commissions. So the regional one has been going for 5 years, and it was appropriate. You know, they were both experiments, basically. It's important to acknowledge they're both experiments of trying to do something differently that help people and businesses respond to the situation, take ownership of that in place. And so those experiments have run for a number of years, and they've been going well and helping, and the feedback is really positive. So this has been a time of consolidating and saying, okay, this is what's worked really well, this is what needs to shift and hasn't been so successful, focusing on the things that have, learning those lessons, and creating a clear long-term view. So that's what we've been doing. And alongside that, we've been working, like I say, we've been having the monthly convener leadership sessions with Ed Whiting and the other conveners, and more recently with the lead officers, which include Polly for Resilient City. And that has been progressing really well and getting really clear. But like any new big network and leadership initiative, it just takes a little bit of time to work out those roles and responsibilities, but I think we're getting there now. And then our activity highlights in the last 6 months, we've done a lot of work looking at scope 3 emissions, but also thinking about resilient supply chains and what that actually means in the city. And we did that work pulling in academic colleagues from the Climate Evidence Unit in the International Priestley Centre at the University of Leeds. And we were funded by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority to do that work. So that was, that gave us a really good foundation of where there were some really big gaps in the understanding of supply chains, and also therefore then opportunities to have really big impact in supporting the supply chains across the city to become more resilient, as well as to reduce their emissions. We had a round table with the executive group of the Leeds Anchors Network, which is the universities, the hospitals, and obviously the council and other large public body institutions in the city. And that was a very interesting and informative discussion that has helped shape our work. We've had we've promoted the Leeds City ambitions within the university, particularly with the Sustainability Research Institute there. And it's worth noting that's one of the largest, if not the largest, sustainability research institute in the UK, with over 60 academics working on a whole range of things that will be of considerable interest to the city. So making that link and ensuring that support coming into the ambitions is really key. We've also been developing a Good Futures framework. So this is about recognising that the transitions that we're going through at the moment from a high carbon economy to hopefully a low carbon economy, but also dealing with climate impacts as they're arising now, and also with the state of nature across the city and across the region being really quite poor alongside the rest of the UK. There's a lot of work to do to help nature recover, to help move to a low carbon way of living, and to adapt to those climate impacts in a way that means that we're considering the impacts on everybody and thinking about the people who are most vulnerable, and that they're included in those conversations and those processes. So the Good Futures framework is really about helping people who are designing big projects or initiatives and policies to be able to think about some of those complex issues that aren't naturally being considered, but gives you a really clear way. And it's a lot of academic evidence behind and embedded in that framework. So that's a really interesting tool that we've been building, and we've trialled it with colleagues within the Leeds City Council and also within the Warm Homes team within the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and that's been going really well. And then there's also a fantastic initiative led by everybody's Councillor Casey Dye. And that's looking at climate in schools and supporting the initiatives, some of which we've heard about here today, but supporting those networks across the schools in the city to really help schools become more resilient in and of themselves, and also to embed like climate into the curriculums and generally just sort of increase awareness and activity around this. And within that work, there's been a short-term research project called Playgrounds of Possibility that worked with a school in Leeds, and that was very focused on working with children in years 2 and year 5 for a week as part of the, fully embedded in the curriculum there for the week, but really looking about and working with the kids on how can we adapt the playgrounds to the future climate and the current climate indeed that we're seeing, so that it's more suitable, and there's still great opportunities to play and learn, but we can do that in a way where the slides aren't too hot, etc., etc. The football pitches don't get flooded all the time, and so on. So all of these themes sort of came out. So it was a great piece of work, and the launch of the findings of that will be in September, and we will make sure that the members of SEAC are invited to that launch. And then, of course, we attended and promoted the Leeds ambitions at the major event in the city in May of UK Reef. Okay, so very briefly then, I wanted to highlight bring to your attention the 15-year strategy that we've adopted within the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, and then subsequently within Leeds Climate Commission. So we have 4 clear goals. So to enable a climate transition that supports a fairer and prosperous society for all, and a nature-rich, thriving and resilient region. We want a region to be prepared for a changing climate, and we want to help a secure, sustainable and clean energy and transport system come into being. Now, each of these goals, it's really important to emphasise, have clear step-back priorities and criteria for the Commission. So the Commissions are, in essence, a temporary response to a complex, challenging problem, and ultimately they're not the solution. They're the solution to help find the solution, if that makes sense. So we want to, ultimately, our genuine goal is to not exist. We want to help support existing decision-making bodies and organisations take on these responsibilities, but to do that in a way that is well-informed and supported, and is collaborative with all the different affected parties being involved in that process. So, yeah, suffice to say, we've lived a recent heat wave last week. We've got another one coming, 30 degrees predicted on Friday. So we're already living with a changing climate. Long drought last year. It's been a while since we've had, or couple of years since we've had extensive flooding, but no doubt that will come again. So many are feeling the impacts of climate directly through damages to homes and businesses and infrastructure. The heat wave is obviously impacting people's abilities to deliver core services, from dog walkers to clinical staff, etc., being able to do those different activities, really impacting the sort of fabric of daily life. And goes just to emphasise, as I'm sure members of this committee know, obviously the greatest impacts are felt by the people and places already under the most pressure. So there's a real sort of fairness and equity focus to all of the Commission's work. I won't read the rest of that, but we can circulate the slides. Okay, so just to confirm then, our role is to, is in recognising that strong action from national government has the greatest impact when it's matched with local partnerships that bring people, leaders and organisations together to shape those solutions in a deep appreciation and love of those places, so that where people really own what is happening in their areas and is affecting their daily life, and are able to be part of the solutions to that. That is where those solutions then have longevity and really work most effectively. So we see our role as bringing together communities, businesses, local and devolved government and place-based organisations from across the city to help, and through that convening, help inspire and accelerate and guide ambitious joined-up action in a way that is informed and led by the people and places of Leeds. We put impacted communities and the natural systems that we all depend upon at the front and centre, and help ensure that the evidence and knowledge and skills needed to create those good jobs, to strengthen local services, build climate resilience and restore nature and cut emissions are done in a way that is shared across the city and the region and used effectively. So fundamentally, we've got 3 core functions. So we shape and drive ambitions for tackling climate change and restoring nature. We help people to see what's possible. Like, we showcase the progress that has already been made in Leeds, but also across the region and across the country. And by bringing in those exemplars and celebrating success, build positive momentum and a sense of hope and can-do, which is so critical in this. And we bring people together from across different sectors and areas of Leeds to turn those ideas into action. So we've got 4 key guiding principles that underpin all of our work, again in both commissions, but we're focusing on Leeds here today. So we want to act with urgency and determination, so learning together and to scale up what works and learn from what doesn't, and it's okay to fail fast, just don't fail slowly, we haven't got time. So just need to do this in a structured and organised way. But yeah, recognise that not everything will work, and that's okay. Learn from it. It's really critical that we use the evidence and that we challenge business as usual models, not through any sort of sense of radicalism, just that they're not working in the way that we need them to with the challenges that we've got. So it's just how do we work with them, how do we sensibly, constructively challenge them to unlock the things that need to change and support those discussions and create the transformations that need to happen. It's incredibly important that we value nature and that we treat it as essential and not optional. Too often it's the trading, bargaining chip in many different conversations, from food systems and agricultural supply and food security through to building developments and so on. But actually, we can no longer afford to do that, so we have to think about that differently. And as we've heard today from the children, it's incredibly important that we bake in and have a very clear focus on caring for future generations, and we think about that in how we're making all decisions. So we do that as a commission and hopefully lead by example within that, but then encourage other people to do, and organisations to do the same thing. And then we've got a set of clear reinforcing values, so we focus on connection, believing that uniting people and nature and creating those solutions together is how we'll do this well. Motivation is incredibly important, and that shaping our future together is key to success. Curiosity, we have to be curious, we have to think about, as I've said, what doesn't work, what isn't working right now, what is working, why is it working. Be curious about these things and open, and hear from all sides of debates and conversations as well, and bring it together. We need to focus on what is right and do that openly and honestly, and aim high and act boldly and lead the way. So that's what we mean by ambition. It's definitely not about taking over, it's just about rising to the challenge. Okay, so connecting the commissions then. So there, I hope this is of interest. It's interesting to me, but I'm aware that not many people will think about both together. So I'll be reasonably brief, but we can come back to this. So the core question for the Regional Commission is, how do we help the region act more coherently? And the 5-year strategy that we're creating at the moment, so we've got that 2040 vision and some clear principles and clear goals with those step-back criteria. And now we're translating that into a clear structure to help us have most impact in the city and in the region. So it's a twin-track approach across both commissions. And at the regional scale, we're thinking about system alignment, using our convening and our influencing opportunities to increase that coordination across the systems and to enable others to take really well-informed action and to build their confidence to do that and have some of these conversations within their roles and in their organisations and partnerships. Within the city, it's slightly different. It's obviously operating within systems, but it's not operating at that system scale. We're very focused on place outcomes at neighbourhood scale and bigger across the city and the support, not supporting the surrounding towns. And we're very focused on supporting implementation, helping unlock investment, and creating tangible change for people and enabling others to create that change. So the outcome at a city scale is really that the city works better and it's working towards that resilient, sustainable ambition. And the outcome for the region is that the systems are aligned and transitioned and transformed where they need to be, that then helps the city work better. So there's a real feedback loop for me and my team to manage and support between the two organisations and partnerships. But in Leeds, we're very focused on helping the city work better for the people and businesses here. Okay, so hopefully the next couple of slides are very familiar to you. So this is the overview of the Leeds ambitions. And it's just really to reiterate that all four work together. So whilst there is Resilient Sustainable City, and I'm a lead convener on behalf of the Commission, and the Commission has a really key role in it, we see our role as working across all four ambitions and supporting that. So that's the main emphasis here, that a Resilient Sustainable City means that we have strong communities, that people are healthy, and that there is inclusive growth across the city. One enables all the others. Okay, so our role then in that context, so again, within the city, just to be explicit about it, we definitely work to the team leads principles and approach that are set out in the ambitions document. And we seek to convene where climate action cuts across those ambitions and the systems and different time horizons. We're a trusted independent convener for ambitious, fair climate action using evidence, lived experience and long-term thinking. And we help team leads translate those shared ambitions into decisions that improve everyday life now and protect future generations, ideally by making those choices clear and helping make good decisions easier. And that would be my main strapline going back to that Good Futures framework. Ultimately, that framework is about helping people make good decisions and making that easier for them to do. So we definitely don't replace any existing partnerships and certainly not any democratic decision making. We're here to seek to reinforce those processes and strengthen them, help meet and ultimately help make Leeds better and make better, fairer long-term choices. So we think there's huge scope for positive impact by maintaining an integrated systems focus, so really championing the future generations thinking across the city, thinking about the realities of making sure that we are really adapting to a 2-degree climate, which is almost certainly on the cards, and that we're also preparing and testing for what a 4 degrees climate might look like and what that means for us in the city. And then drawing evidence on those long-term costs of inaction, if we don't do those things, what that would mean. Okay, I think I said that. So yeah, this is just to reiterate that Lee's ambition is something that needs to be owned by and shared by the city, but this is this drawing out the detail of the resilient, sustainable city. I set out in that document, this was a council published strategy or plan for the city. Okay, so I've spoken a lot. You're about to hear from Millie, which is probably welcome for everybody. So over the last 6 months, we've been working with council officers and also with the other partners on the ambitions, the conveners, to work out how we're going to work together and what the different roles are. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the areas of focus that we're looking at as a commission, and we're just cracking on with that. We believe that these things are really great for Team Leeds, and they will support and enable the Leeds ambitions. On the right-hand side, there will be many more things that can be put in here that will come through SEAC's business as well, but these are just some of the items and pieces of work that the council does that contribute to the ambitions, particularly the sustainable resilient city ambition. And then in the middle, This is the sort of more messy middle bit, I suppose, where the Commission has a role, other partners have a role, other conveners have a role, and it's just working through what this means. But the core function of the Commission to help sort out the convening, straighten out some of the partnerships, and do that foundational work there, really comes to bear. We can really help with sort of untangling these things and unlocking really positive action. So we will, I will stop now, hand over to Millie, who's going to talk more about the ones that are in the bright green on this diagram.
Yes, thanks, Rosa. So through that, we've identified a few core work streams. We've tested it with our commissioners, with city partners. It's come through. So I'll chat through some of that. The first work stream really has been around building a nature positive Leeds and what a city biodiversity plan could look like with a stronger offering on nature and what that means. So it's kind of focused on how every stakeholder can see themselves within that, how we bring it into everyday life through a different kind of plan, how we map that right through from what nature means to people in terms of well-being, from schools, and certainly in the resilient sense of how we adapt to heat with more shading, what that means for flooding and reducing surface water. So the Commission's role in that and where we are currently testing, our first activity is bringing together those key stakeholders to say, right, if we have one city approach, what does that look like, and can everybody see themselves within that and what we're aiming for? How we can tell stories around best practice, what restoring nature and what biodiversity recovery really means, and how we can see it, as well as a clear set of indicators, because we don't know how we're doing if we can't measure it. So making sure we've got the method and the framework aligned to a lot of these as well. And lining up our potential contributors across the council, the anchors, networks, communities, and the university to bring the evidence and the people together. With our first kind of priority in getting this moving, we've been shifting, I should say, with a 5-year kind of vision, but within this is a clear 3-year work programme attached to each of these work streams, and then like a 12-month, 18-month initial priority to test how they're working and get them off the ground. So with this work stream, there's been interest around the nature civic community partnership, so working with a local group at Hyde Park Source and YPIP, another partnership in the region, to start exploring that. We're also mapping it against the goals, so the ambitions themselves and how they're feeding back into that, as well as the Commission's strategic goals. We've included them indicatively, but we'll be shaping up again that framework of how we're looking at the goals against each of these work streams as well. So the second one, which as you can see, there's a lot of goals attached to this one, so it's one we've been excited about and has come through a lot of different conversations. So this brief around testing what resilient placemaking looks like. So if we're building a greener, healthier, better connected and well-designed future city, how do we test that in reality and respond to live projects and developments at the moment and start seeing impact? So we are looking at the South Bank development as a living example of what a resilient future-ready place looks like and can be, and how we test practical interventions within a major development with all the different stakeholders at those stages. So our current indicative activities throughout this, again, is working out the Commission's point of intervention, so what stage it sits at, what opportunities we have to influence change, whether that be developers, council, planning, how we can kind of look at the whole development and see what the resilient ambition principles are kind of attached to those stages. As part of that, it's come through looking at the Northern Growth Strategies in city investment funds and the new town potential funding and planning, so how we can actually use live and very immediate funding that's coming through to the city and show how we're using that best and really seeing it in a place as it's developing and growing. So that's kind of our first step in this project, is setting up that work programme. I feel like for people not familiar with the Commissioners, we kind of neglected that, I've realised listening back, but We've got about 22 commissioners for Leeds, and we're 44 plus for Yorkshire. Commissioners that give their voluntary time into the commissions, not just kind of shaping the work programme, but being really passionate about helping deliver a lot of this as well. So alongside shaping up these areas, is bringing in that capacity to help lead some of the different strands of it too. So we'll be matching in our commissioners with where they're best leading experts in this area as well. So that is our resilient placemaking. The next one we've been looking at, as Rosa mentioned a little bit earlier, is around building a resilient and sustainable supply chain for the city and bringing that into reality. So what does it mean? It's obviously behind the scenes a lot of the time when people think about supply chains, but it's in everybody in business and organisations' lives every single day, from food to energy to construction, services and everything. So we've put a bit of a boundary on where we can start and make some impact, how we work through the ambitions and our other conveners. So specifically working with the Leeds Anchors Network firstly, but also with the Business Anchors Network on their kind of movement and direction for the city to say if we're aiming for resilient supply chain, this is what it looks like. These are the kind of frameworks you can do, how we procure locally, what does energy efficiency look like, and actually get a really clear framework for what it means and how different organisations and stakeholders can see themselves within it, not just on the emissions front, but on the literal actions of what that means locally, how to procure and how to test that. We've been working to deploy the Good Futures framework here. So again, a test not just to how we're more resilient in a sense that we'll be able to eat and build in a future, but how we make it fair. So how we make sure that we are representing local small businesses within our supply chains, and just having a bit more security on the fairness as well. So everyone here, so that's our initial priority there, is kind of building with that shared momentum and then exploring that with the rest of the city anchors, and specifically the university partners. Our next one is around making sustainable travel part of cultural events. Travel and transport is huge for Leeds. There's a lot of bigger plans, but we wanted to kind of focus in on something we can really get moving with, that will get people quite excited about, and lean into how people travel and how that intersects between people going to events, whether that's a football match, a rugby match, different sporting ones, an event, and working with our partners. It's come through one of our partners, Leeds Rhino, is kind of testing the idea of wouldn't this be an amazing thing to have, and we agree, because it applies to all the partners across the city. So being able to kind of host that, how do we do it, how do we get people involved and launch that pilot to say, can Leeds be an exemplar in how we travel across our city sustainably, testing it with this pool, but also looking more widely on how that works across the city and the region. And then again, Rosa touched on this slightly, but growing our climate action in schools and youth engagement work stream. So currently this group has grown across the last 2 years. It's been really exciting. You can see all the current contributors there at the moment, but the list is ever growing from different interest. It's secured some funding most recently with its initial work to look at an audit across Leeds to understand where we're at with our schools, really build up that picture to start saying, okay, we've unlocked how certain schools have, been able to do more or less. How do we bring everybody with us? How do we get those shared resources together? How do we create a pack attached to that to help schools and understand what our youth engagement and voice is in the city as well? Rosa's already touched on the Playgrounds of Possibility pilot, but that was a really exciting one within this, and then what it looks like as we roll that out again across the city and the region and its bigger potential. Then finally, really, that underpins those different work streams is the kind of foundational network that we have in the city and the strategic partnerships and development and coordination capacity that the Commission provides. We've looked back at kind of our USP and how we actually deliver value is unlocking that independence, and the people's time that we give is our development capacity to bring people together to do things better and do things more easily. So really to hone in on what our current network is of skills and expertise. we've already done that, but feeding that directly into these different work streams, setting out really clear, mapping all of our different networks. You know, we've got commissioners that are everything from, you know, innovation and green tech right through to our schools and our public sector networks, our property forums, our academia. You know, how do we harness all of that together and get our current picture to plug that into our work streams and flag anything else we're missing within that as well. So I've hopefully explained that clear enough, but we'd love to have any questions from everyone on overall feedback, but particularly any opportunities that are aligned with the Resilient City ambition or the work that we've covered, as well as flagging any gaps or aspects that you feel are missing, we can start integrating as we move forward. Rosa, I don't know if you've got anything final to add, or happy to open that to questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that comprehensive rundown of all the work that has been taking place and is planned. Really appreciate that. Before I open up to questions, are you happy to share the slides with members of the committee? Super. So can you arrange that, Rachel, after the meeting? That'd be lovely. Thank you very much. Right. Questions, comments on anything that Rosa and Millie have said? Start with Councillor Dresser.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm struggling to ask any questions because we didn't receive the presentation prior to the meeting. And I think it would have been very helpful if we had received the presentation, then we'd be able to dissect it and have a look at it prior to the meeting, so we'd be able to ask relevant questions. I can't see how I can ask any questions from memory of what you've actually said, because we've not had the presentation, so that's my point, really.
Okay, point taken, but you're welcome to ask anything from any of the slides you've seen or anything that you've heard, but I will take that point away. Thank you. Councillor Stables?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I wondered if you could give us some more information in terms of a bit more detail underneath this, or when we would be likely to get that. So in terms of the timing and more specifics, which I guess would be what we would engage more with, in terms of things like, you know, when we're talking about resilience in schools, for example, you know, what are you looking at funding streams available to help specific stuff? So, you know, with climate change, how the classrooms are heating up, and, you know, how is there funding available to make schools more resilient to temperature? So you've talked very high level. What's below that? Are we going to get information on that and about specifics and about funding?
Do you want me to come in? Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah. Okay. So so it is at a high level. So we've been setting out the framework that we're operating in, because now the work is about pinning that down. So Katie, Councillor Dye mentioned the funding that we've just secured to be able to do the baselining work across the schools in the city. So from that, we'll be able to understand like what's needed next. If there's a need and an ask to understand where funding streams are at across the city, or within a specific sector, then that's something we could do convening on. I would be very hesitant to say that we can suddenly provide some insight on what funding is available and where and so on. That would be a work stream within that school's project that would in itself need to be resourced, and or we would need to do convening around. So I think what you've, just to be clear, I suppose, you've got a group of very willing people in the city that are organised and are focused, but there is a limited amount of resource or capacity within that. There is scope for that to grow. So if something is identified as a really key priority, we would then need to seek funding to enable that to come into being. Like it's the actual staff time or like man hours behind those volunteers is reasonably limited. So it's just about managing expectations, I suppose. So we're trying to create very clear direction and structure so that we can then say, okay, this is something that people like SEAC and others feel is really valuable for the city, that now makes an investment case or is evidence to support you guys as policymakers and or advocates into those conversations with your education leads and portfolio holders and so on. So there's many different ways of working it. Trying not to be mealy-mouthed, just to be really honest about it. Yeah.
Yes, please come back. Yep.
Just to say that I appreciate that and I appreciate your honesty, and I suppose I'm concerned that there is a gap, that there is a lot. It sounds like there's a lot of really good work going on at a high level, looking at what is needed at a very high level, and what I'd like, I think it's just so important that we know how that would transition into something actionable, into actual funding, and things that can be, with that funding, can be actioned, because we as councillors all the time see the sort of the nitty-gritty, the things that need to happen and change right now, and I hear these. I don't disagree with anything that's been said. At a high level, what needs to be done, but there seems to me like a gap in the middle of how do we take that, or even a timing of, okay, we're looking at this right now at this level, and then in 6 months' time there'll be then workshops looking at this, or work streams looking at these specific things around, which is the next level down. It seems like there's a gap there somewhere.
Yeah, so what we've presented is like one slide per work stream. What Millie's working on now is translating that into a 3-year programme and then a 1-year plan that will have that detail in it. And then our intent is then to socialise that with our commissioners, make sure that we've got commissioners who are leading on each of those things. We're starting to mobilise their networks into that action. But you're absolutely right. There are a number of big gaps in this area about how we're going to do that. And the Commission is part of helping work out how those gaps get filled. It isn't filling those gaps. We're not a delivery organisation. We shouldn't get funding in to start plugging those gaps. Success for us is where other people go, oh yeah, there is a real gap there. If only I knew X. And we go, great, we'll find out who knows X, bring that in, and then the action happens and the delivery happens elsewhere. So we're deliberately slightly outside of that. But your point about the detail of the work streams is well made, and we're very clear on needing to pin that down. That's the intent over the next 3 months, to have those work streams, and then we'd be very happy to either come back or share that, or to Councillor Dresser's point, we can follow up and have separate conversations as is needed. Very open to all of that.
Thank you. Yes.
Just very quickly, just to say, I really appreciate that. I think what we need to know is that next level down. So I think it'll be really helpful if that's possible to come back and fit that into our programme, so that we see the detail underneath that. But also, you've started to say there's you do know some timings which we don't know. So it would be really useful for us to know, okay, how do you see the next year? Because this is a climate emergency, and I'm really concerned that you've talked about that. We don't have the time, we don't have the luxury of time actually now. We've got to make changes now, and I'm just really concerned that this has to be delivered. It's not just about the ideas and where we need to be talking about, it's actually the deliverability of it that we need to get to. And I think we need to have a really clear plan of the timing and how that leads into action on the ground. Thank you.
Can I come back in just briefly?
Please do.
So there's like I say, the Commission can be part of helping work that through, but it's not the whole of working that through, and it's certainly not the answer to it. So, but we will share the detail of what we've got. The thing I wanted to, or when we get there, the thing I wanted to share is that through the convening conversations around the ambitions, it's become really clear that there isn't the same level of detail like there is on the healthy or indeed the inclusive growth. Like each have their own sort of city-owned strategies. Marmot Health work. There's the equivalent on inclusive growth, thriving. There's a lot of focus on social value and so on. Arguably, it's not as robust as the other two, but those two are really strong. And there isn't an equivalent on climate and environment or resilient, sustainable city, like what that actually means below those high-level goals that are in the ambition. So we're trying to work out what our part into that is, but there is a void in the city, I think, of that clear. And I think, crucially, not just inverted commas, a council strategy. I think this is about collective action and ownership, and a collective action and owned response to that, and working out what that means for the city with key organisations, the anchors, business anchors, etc., but also other, like the big finance sector in the city. What role can that play, etc. So there is a piece of work to do to translate the high-level goals of the ambitions into actions. We've been working out what we can do with what we've got to support that, but there is a gap beyond us, 100%, and we'd be very open to working with people on filling that.
Thank you. Polly, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to give, I suppose, a practical example, because sometimes I think it's difficult when you're watching sort of presentations to understand it in sort of actually what it means. So if we take, for example, the work that they refer to from the Leeds Climate Commission on the Scope 3, so the work that sort of the Climate Commission do will bring the sort of academics in, the understanding, the data analysis, but actually how you then translate that will come back to individual organisations in terms of what decisions we make in terms of the way we procure and what we do. So I think that kind of shows what I think exactly what Rosa was saying about the difference between sort of the Climate Commission's role. They're not controlling spend, they're not controlling delivery, but they are providing that framework and that governance and stopping us, the university, the hospital, all doing the exact same things and providing that kind of framework to do it once. And similar with sort of adaptation at a Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission level, took us all through a programme at a local authority to understand actually what are the different things we can do. How each local authority then goes away and delivers that is up to us, but at least we've had that sort of central guidance and things rather than each of us trying to find our own way. So it's a way to bring together, and what you'd hope is that's happening with all the organisations that are signed up, not just the sort of public sector part. So it's just trying to sort of bring it to life a little bit from how it feels from our side.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Hart-Brooke's next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'd echo the thoughts. It would be really handy to have all presentations ahead of the meeting so we can spend our Sundays reading them, because it does let you kind of compose your thoughts. I think the presentation was very good. A lot of stuff to kind of cram into it. I sort of felt it was very specific. Like it was kind of, I think that was what kind of Councillor Stables was touching on. I was almost kind of waiting for there's lots of what we're going to be doing. I was kind of craving some, and here's some, because obviously this has been one of the longer running climate commissions. I'm kind of, and this might not be in the presentation for it, craving almost like the greatest hits of here's things that we've already achieved, because it from the presentation, from me as a councillor perspective, if I'm engaging with residents on, I need to be able to say kind of simply and succinctly, here's what's done, here's what's going to be done, here's what we'd like to do, but I haven't got and I must admit, I mean, I'm quite geeky and technical. I struggle to pull anything out of that I could sit down with a resident and explain kind of in an elevator pitch what we're going to be doing, when we're going to be doing it, and how we're going to be doing it, and who. And I appreciate the convening role, but I mean, the things that I hear as a resident are things like, there's been a lot in the press around the location and positioning of things like battery storage and solar panel farms, and whether there's any role in the city in kind of shaping that. We do a lot on kind of rewilding, but a lot of what I get in my inbox is people complaining about scruffy grass. So we kind of take out, we hand over a lot back to nature, but we don't actively always manage it. So it's kind of bring it down to a level that residents can kind of engage with, and we can kind of take the story to them, because although I'm very eco-minded myself, I am detecting the population is kind of losing, is becoming less connected with it. Some of it because of lobby groups, but some of it, because they have more, in their view, pressing matters such as the pound in their pocket and rising bills, etc. So we do have to be kind of very clever how we communicate it.
Okay, so in terms of the points that you make about, so what we can do, we'll share these slides and we can do follow-ups. We can also develop a very succinct summary as well, because there's still, two different asks, one for the elevator pitch and one for the detailed work programme. We'll meet both, just to say that they're different things, but we can do that in terms of, and by the way, there's a climate commission that's doing X. That's absolutely fine to give you those messages. In terms of your points about energy and nature, so I didn't want to go into too much on the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission side today, but we've been doing a lot of work to work out what to prioritise on and why. And one of the areas that we're focusing on is the energy system to support across the different tiers. So to support the new National Energy Systems Operator, creating those regional energy strategic plans, and to promote good governance around the local area energy planning process. And I would encourage you to think about the questions that you've had there about solar farms and battery storage and so on, and feed that into the local area energy planning process. I'd also encourage residents and community groups and so on to feed into local area energy planning. That's the main way to do that. So at a Yorkshire and Humber scale, we're very focused on that and how to advocate that across all councils and across all levels. You also talked about the greatest hits, so we have done that previously at SEAT, so I just didn't want to repeat too much and kind of here they are again telling us what they did, so apologies, we've missed that. There are a number of things that we have done which again we can share. What I would say, again being very candid, is that there are a couple of years where the resource in my team was very focused on establishing that regional commission, and the city did, the work in the city commission did slow down as a result of that. So part of what we've been doing now is making sure that they're recalibrated and they work together really neatly. But there has been great activity, but it has been less. But in a good example of things that we've done, certainly under my predecessor, was creating the pathways to net zero that supported the council's decision to declare a climate emergency. Leeds was also the first, the home of the first citizens' jury on what would it take, what is net zero, should we be doing it, what does that mean for the city, and that was in 2019, and the Leeds Climate Commission played a key role in enabling that to happen. So there have been a number of those different things, but it's been a little bit lighter in 21, 22 was a little bit lighter for a whole host of reasons, including the regional commission, and then to illness and all of that sort of organisational stuff. Then to your point about nature, I think that really highlights the criticalness of good communications, and that's something that Polly and I have been talking about under the nature aspect of the Resilient City ambition and how we can support that, and really celebrating the amount of good work that has gone on across the city in terms of rewilding and bringing biodiversity back into the city and into its towns and neighbourhoods. But also how much more there is to do, but get the balance right of celebrating its successes and showcasing that. Again, it's work that needs to be resourced, but Polly's got a great plan in terms of utilising MSc students from the university and bringing them into the council. So you've got the double win of young people working with the council, learning about the council and understanding all the great work it does, but also their time and capacity to support initiatives like this. So hopefully we'll get a couple of great placements that will help us boost that work. But yeah, point well made. That debate is tricky. And then the final thing I'd say is it is dropping down the list, but people are very concerned. between 70 to 80% of people, like across a range of different surveys, somewhere between 75% and 85% of people are really concerned about climate impacts and climate change. They don't necessarily know quite what it is. They don't necessarily know what they can do about it or what to ask their councillors or their MPs about. And there's a lot of easy messaging there about, well, recycle or what have you, which, whilst is very important, is also disabling from some of these bigger questions about where is your energy coming from? Why are your energy bills so high? What should you or could you be asking for, and what conversations could you be having about that? Transport across the city, etc., etc. There's a lot, there's a lot in there, we would try and encourage those conversations to be had, very happy to pick that up.
Thank you. I think there's some really relevant points, Rosa, and I guess it's about, in terms of the presentation that you bring to us, striking the balance between those of us who've been on the committee for a long time, listening to the things that have been said year after year, but also providing new members with the information. And I think it's a relevant question to ask about the wins, but there are probably a lot of us around this table would say, well, we don't want to sit and hear that again. We don't want the Climate Commission to come and say, hey, we've done this, this and this. We want to hear, where's your focus for the future? And also kind of an understanding of what the Commission's about. It's not about delivery, it's about it is about a bigger picture. But I do get that it's speaking to different audiences, I guess. And I think that's a kind of a good focus for the next time that you come. Perhaps if in the slide pack that you share with us, it does have an additional slide adding into the pack saying what the Climate Commission has achieved. And then maybe next time we just have, to talk to your points, Councillor Stables, a really focused discussion that doesn't go into anything except resharing the work streams with us and updating us on actions that sit behind that and what's happened with each of those work streams, on the assumption that we're all up to speed and aware of exactly what has gone before, if that kind of makes sense. Okay, Councillor Shahzad is next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of points. You mentioned something about South Bank, and I'm sure obviously that's lots of development, lots of building going to be taking place, obviously, to create homes that are needed. But as the children raised the question today, obviously with the heat, and obviously we can't deny the climate is changing, and it's definitely changing, and I think we've got another week of extreme heat coming. What are we actually doing to work with our planning officers or planning departments to actually see how the buildings of the future are built, and are they resilient? Both because we have two sets of temperatures. We have the cold winters, which we're not having at the moment, but we might end up having the really cold winters again, and obviously dealing with extreme heat, because obviously I think the aircon is on here. That's obviously adding to the costs, and could we, obviously the changes to this room might not be possible, but for the buildings of the future, what can we do to make sure that for those people that are purchasing those new buildings, they are suitable for the environment that we're actually moving into, which is the changing temperatures from extreme cold to extreme heat, and people, obviously office staff, school children, residents are struggling to cope with these temperatures. And again, if we're going to start using aircon and other methods, that's going to be more energy needed, more energy may be wasted. So have we got something in plans regards that? And my second question, because you mentioned doing something with Leeds rhinos, and again recently we've just had the festival at Roundhay Park, and obviously we have lots of big events. What is your take? Because you didn't really say much about this scheme that you are interested in working with the Leeds rhinos. How can we actually make travel sustainable when we're looking at a tram system which doesn't cover the whole city either? So what can we do to make sure people can have sustainable quick, efficient transport and goes to places where people want to go, not to just specific points like the current buses that we have, which only come to the city centre and then you're kind of stuck. So, thank you.
Brilliant questions. So those are the questions that we're asking people, basically. So we're on exactly the same page. So with South Bank, really keen to work with the planning teams. We've got we've got a meeting in with Martin Elliott as head of planning in the summer. But really, what we want to do is work with the planning teams, but also the other city development teams, the regeneration teams, in a supportive way to help them ask and then answer some of those questions. There is, I think, inevitably a time lag, right? So some of the development that's going on has gone all the way through planning and is probably too late to influence, and certainly from a commission's perspective. But we're really keen that the questions that you raise, how is the development and the vision for South Bank, and the whole smile, like how is that going to accommodate a change in climate, and make sure that those places are livable and comfortable for people, and also to do it in a way that doesn't close out or negatively impact the communities to the south of the South Bank. And I know a lot of the officers are very keen on that, but probably have a ton of questions about how they might actually realise those things. And so what we would like to do is start that conversation, capture those questions, and then start to work with the university colleagues and other sector leaders and start to bring in some of that expertise, as long as capacity and appetite and so on from the council officers is willing and able to do that. There's under a lot of pressure to deliver, and then you're bringing in a new work stream. So how do we support that getting baked in, and then bring in other people and as voluntary as possible, right, to keep costs down, but bringing that expertise to support that so that they are doing everything that they need to. Big questions, but that's like on the South Bank, that's the plan. It's why we focused on it, with the mayoral development zone, etc., and the multi-agency team that Angela has set up brilliantly. There's a lot of scope there to, I think, support the thinking early, and make sure that climate adaptation is really woven in there, and then that becomes an exemplar for the rest of the city and beyond. As well as getting it right there, which would be great, and really important. And then your point about Leeds Rhinos and transport, that is its scoping stage, that initiative. So what's happened is a number of different partners have flagged to us, like, look, we would really love to help. We understand the council's sort of long-term mission zero and transport strategy. We understand the challenges and difficulties around the tram and its limitations even when it is built, as you've said, its limitations even then. So how do we, and also the point about, the time is now for this. So what do we do now that helps create the right behaviours, and test the system and see what is possible? And so this idea of working with various different cultural offerings in the city and seeing what the transport options might be, doing some tested pilots and so on, that then help demonstrate what could be done, and hopefully start building a bigger programme there. That's the idea, is to test and try and answer some of the questions that you've posed, Councillor. So I don't have the answers, but the plan is to try and answer them.
Come on then, come in with your different question.
Thanks for the answers, which were obviously not answers in the sense that you were going to look at it, so hopefully appreciate that. Another question is, you mentioned commissioners and you said voluntary commissioners and with expertise. So how do you actually pick these commissioners and where do they come from?
Yeah, great question. So they largely, so we have run open recruitment in the past. We advertised for a range of different commissioner roles. Because they're voluntary, you get a particular kind of person, someone who is either really passionate about it, able to give their time, and or there's a really clear overlap with their day job. We ask people to, people are commissioned as independent, like as individuals, not as representatives of their organisation. So we keep a line there. And in terms of experts, so we've got, like, on transport, we've got a range, but we are also aware that as we go, part of the idea of getting I know it feels tedious, and we're all feeling the pressure. Trust me, I talk about climate impacts all the time. I feel the pressure to support delivery massively. But if we don't have the strategic framework, then how do I know who I need to recruit in as commissioners, where we've got gaps and so on? So having created that, deciding what the initiatives and the work streams are going to be, and then we can make sure that we've got the right people around the table. And we'll do that through a mix of working through networks, knowing who those people are, testing and challenging ourselves to make sure that we're not just getting, creating a gang of people who all already know each other and come from the same spaces, and then also making sure that we're plugging the gaps. So where we think we might be a bit weak on a certain area, that we're actively seeking and going to networking events and forums and building those networks so that we can attract in the right people as commissioners. The commissioners we currently have were selected, came forward, I think that's the best way to say it. There are people who have come forward and have put up their hand to say, yeah, we want to try and help lead and develop this across the city. We've got a couple who are have spent their careers working in transport and energy. We've got some that work as small business owners, delivering process re-engineering and change across organisations. We've got some who are sustainability experts in the private sector, in the financial sector and in pensions, some who are developers in the city. So quite a broad range. Some come from Climate Action Leeds, who start to bring in the community voice. I would definitely say hands up, that's an area where we need to work harder. So yeah, we're not perfect, I'm not pretending we are. But there's great assets and strength there and something to build.
Thank you. Happy with that, Councillor Shahzad? Well, Councillor Harrington wants to come in, so I'll bring Councillor Harrington in next.
Thank you, Chair. My question really is, I may have missed it, but what's the process for the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission to actually feed into national discussions about the National Planning Policy Framework? It might be something you want to talk to Martin Elliott about when you speak to him, because the government are looking at that at the moment, and there is feedback coming out, and they are going to be giving information to local authorities. This would seem to be a really good time to say, we're looking at all these things, you want builders, you want developers to do this, it needs to get in that NPPF, because if it's not there, they won't do it. And we'll get the same response that we had in Wetherby when we were very, very, very hot on saying, we've got new developments, what are you going to do to make it as efficient as possible, energy efficient as possible? But they still put gas central heating boilers in. And they said, oh, well, we'll do it when they change the rules, we'll comply with the rules when they change. But it would be really helpful if you could get in now and say, these are some of the things you need to get into the NPPF. Thank you.
Sadly, I couldn't agree with you more. Sadly, I'm not sure that they are going to come out in the NPPF. I'm not optimistic for that. We did provide a response to the consultation, of course we did, and we spoke to people like Martin and others around the region. So on things like that, the process within the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commissions, we've got a regional policy forum, and that convenes 3 times a year, and variously can have separate working groups or projects running, one of which Polly talked about in terms of building capacity in local authorities across the region on adaptation and resilience. And then we've convened groups under the RPF for a number of different consultation responses, and the National Planning Policy Framework was one of them. There are a number of big concerns. There are a lot of concerns about what's in the NPPF sort of change and those proposals. And so we're part of some national conversations and networks around that as well. Checking alignment and reinforcement of messages, and also making sure we hadn't missed something. So we have fed in. one of our key areas of work as a regional commission is to make sure that we are providing that voice on behalf of Yorkshire and Humber international conversations, not only on behalf of, but alongside local government. Some of the responses we've been able to put in, we've fed in on consultations on the regional energy strategic planning methodology, for example, which was really technical and very detailed. And a lot of the officers that we work with said that they were not going to be able to provide in feedback and voice into that process if we hadn't have done the convening, like stripped down, okay, let's just look at these couple of questions, these are the most important ones, how does that work, what's your views on that, and then consolidating that and feeding it in. So yeah, we're definitely very active in those kind of conversations at a regional scale. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else on my list. Does anybody else want to ask a question? Go on then, Councillor Shahzad.
Sorry about this. Yeah, you did kind of mention it. What is the community buy-in? Because obviously, I feel like some communities are really buying into it, and some are not. And do you have any way of measuring what is the sort of feedback from communities, and especially in buying into the fact that we have got a climate emergency, and what they can do as individuals or as communities in different areas? Have we got something that you could kind of give us some information on?
So we can certainly work with colleagues to pull something together for you and share that. The percentage of data is representative across the UK and therefore applicable to Leeds, but they are national sort of Ipsos surveys and so on that different organisations have done, but they are very consistent about the weighting and the percentages. So I think you can have real confidence in that, that most people are concerned about it. I think a thing we have not collectively, people have not got right, is talking about abstract things rather than what matters to people's daily lives. And I think that's a shift we've got to make, is how do we make this relevant for people in their day-to-day living? And that is primarily, right, that's energy bills, how is your home comfortable, how are you getting around, how does your food stay safe, nutritious, affordable, secure, etc. So I think there's something about how we're describing and talking about the climate emergency. I think it can, I'm sure we all feel this, it can feel really abstract and over there in something else. But the trick is to sort of think about how to talk about it in daily life. In terms of engagement across the city, what we want to do is make sure that we're advocating for people to work with communities when they're developing policies, projects, initiatives and so on, that people aren't being done to, they're part of the discussions and can own it. As a commission ourselves, what we need to do is get better at making sure that we're hearing the views of people in Leeds into our work. We're just not resourced to do widespread direct community engagement across the city. That's not our remit or our role. So we do rely on a network of networks. It's partly why I'm so delighted that there is a thriving ambition that Voluntary Action Leeds are the lead convener for that, and that we can work with them on the alignment between thriving communities and a resilient, sustainable city, and really do that together. And then, of course, there's Climate Action Leeds that has done a lot of work across the city with various different community groups in different parts of the city and towns, and has just secured some more funding to carry on with that work. So that is great, but I'm aware that we need to broaden it beyond those people already activated and excited about climate and comfortable describing it that way, and go wider into other communities. And I think that's where working with the people working in thriving will really help us to do that. So we bring that together. Hopefully that helps. But we can give you some insights. We've been doing some work with the Town and Parish Councils Association across Yorkshire, working with town and parish councillors. There's quite a bit in there specifically on energy at this point, but we can share that pack with you. We've developed up a little survey and questions and so on that are very engaging with answers. In a good way of opening up some of these conversations. So we can definitely circulate that information. That's helpful.
Thank you. Anybody else with a question? Okay, so I will bring that item to a close. So thank you so much for coming along, Rosa and Millie. In terms of our actions, you agreed that you would share slides with Rachel, who will then share with the committee, but also put in a kind of a what has been achieved slide for those people who weren't aware of that. And you said that you would invite SEAC members to the Playgrounds of Possibility launch, which I strongly advise people to come along to in September. Then we also agreed that when you come back, we'll have a really focused delve into the background of all the work streams that you shared with us, and that will be the only topic that we pick up out of the Climate Commission's work next time. Is there anything I missed? No? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. I will give you a minute to move off the table.
Thanks. I just wanted to say we produced we worked with ADEPT, so the Association of Directors of Environment, Planning and Transport nationally, to produce a Talking Climate Toolkit. That's available online on the ADEPT website, but we'll put the link of that in as well. But that helps all of these with all of these conversations and framing and so on.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so that moves us on to item 9. So if you were at the last meeting, we had a discussion all about the forward plan for this year. If you weren't at the meeting, you will have seen the results of that in the minutes. So what we always do in this first meeting of the municipal year is look at the detail of that. So I'm going to hand over to Rachel to talk us through that.
Thank you, Chair. First time for a change. It's actually come up without any sort of loading. So yeah, as Councillor Dye mentioned in the last meeting, that we obviously talked about the topics that we wanted to see in this next municipal year. So I'll be just sort of walking through the more detailed forward plan, and also a bit different from last year. I've actually got detailed and dates for the SEAC workshops as well that we did last year. So we took on feedback in relation to that, where people understandably wanted to have the set of meetings in advance for all the workshops. So the second part of my item will be talking about that in a bit more detail as well. So I appreciate we've more or less had the first session on this, because what we tend to do is, for those who aren't familiar with the setup of SEAC towards the start of the first meeting of the municipal year, we tend to have something which does kind of collate the general picture of climate and resilience in the city. Obviously thanks to the Climate Commission for providing that. And we've obviously had our open forum. Just to say that, as we mentioned previously in what was in the report, we've kept the format very similar to last year. We will be from a couple of meetings time, we'll be having the directors update again, which is where we have a representative from each director at each of the meetings, and they will provide with their team an update on how they're working towards the climate change and what they're doing in their team. And I know that Councillor Dye will be contacting all the directors, and we'll be asking a specific ask of them again. Those of you familiar, previously we've had them come to us about talk about Grey Fleet and sort of talk about adaptation. So we'll be keeping those kind of items in mind again, but that'll be all confirmed shortly. So seems like there's a bit of a gap, obviously avoiding the summer holidays after today's meeting. We've obviously got the next meeting in September. We'll be exploring once again, the theme will be supporting and enhancing our nature and biodiversity through climate change. So similar to previous years, we won't just be having internal teams from the council. We will be including external third sector partnerships. For example, I know previously we've had the likes of Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, and it's to provide sort of a much wider angle on what we're actually, the work we're doing and what we can do, and obviously similar to today, ask for feedback from the committee as to what we can take forward further. Look at the challenges. We understand a lot of the time, we understand our challenges in the council, and we know there is obviously a lot of challenges for external attendees as well. So we'll be sort of looking at that particular theme. And then moving forward, we are aware that last year I think we didn't actually have too much in terms of relation to waste and circular economy, and it's actually quite a large topic which is sort of, you know, we do appreciate there is quite a gap within the council that we do have, especially in circular economy. We do work with people external to the council and sort of see the work that they do, but we thought it'd be really good to bring forward an item which actually explores how we can bring that into the council's work and the city's work in a bit more detail. So we'll have an update from Waste Management about how we're actually, what we're doing throughout, and also including private sector representation about waste management. But linking through to that, we'll be looking at circular economy and how it's just more than waste, and what we can do, what's realistic as well, and what we can bring through. That'd be okay to take. I'll
put you on the list. You can come in when Rachel's finished.
So we'll be looking at that particular item, because we are aware, like I say, we've not had a concrete update on that as such in the last sort of couple of years. We will then move through to a sort of adapting our cities to climate through infrastructure, regeneration and planning. We didn't really want to have it just as one particular item, one after the other for that particular theme, so I thought it'd be good to understand what developments are taking place across those wider remits, and also bring in at that point partnership organisations through the Leeds Anchors Network, which I appreciate Rosa and Millie mentioned in their previous item, so we can get a wider picture of not just what we're doing, obviously what the likes of universities are doing, the health sector are doing, in terms of linking in with all the regeneration and planning and how we work with each other. In that particular month as well, we will have our usual annual reports. So those of you familiar to the committee, we know that we bring forward the annual Climate Emergency Advisory Committee report, and we also bring forward the Climate Emergency Annual Executive Board report. It's quite a mouthful there. So we'll have the usual discussion about those particular reports, and any comments from the committee will be taken forward within those reports before they go to their relevant approvals. And moving through to February, if my screen stops scrolling. Towards the end of the last municipal year, we had a really good update from representatives to do with Roundy Festival, and we also had representatives from Leeds United who came forward to talk about the challenges that they found through hospitality, events, and just generally as businesses in relation to the climate emergency. So we asked if they would return to talk about some initiatives, and obviously the festival itself, the physical festival, what they found in terms of relation to climate and sustainability. But we also wanted to work on that a lot more, and I know it was kind of mentioned within the last presentation about the transport side, and working with different, the likes of Leeds Rhinos, potentially, like I say, Leeds United, and sort of developing that a bit more. But we also, for that particular theme, wanted to bring in sort of the likes of hospitality and businesses such as hotels, and other sort of businesses that aren't necessarily covered within the traditional format of the Leeds Anchors networks as well. And then finally, for the main committee, we've got an angle on theme of the climate and sustainability throughout our communities. So this will link quite nicely into the workshop plan, because for the final main committee meeting, it will bring forward examples of good practice in relation to climate and community engagement, have representatives from third sector and communities share their experiences, and it will actually link to the conclusion of the SEAC workshop, which this year, following on from successful community engagement from last year, we're actually going to be focusing on climate engagement within communities as the workshop theme, which was spoken about in the last meeting of last municipal year. So the idea will be there will be some 5 particular workshops, which will, sorry about this, I'll make it a bit bigger because I appreciate that's quite small text. So the workshop this year, which will link in that final thing, will be 5 workshop dates, which these will be officially circulated with the usual invitations after this meeting, and similar type to the communities and engagement, communications and engagement workshop that we had last year. We'll be looking at establishing challenges and barriers of climate within community engagement this year, and we'll be sort of looking at having establishing a plan and particular work streams that we want to work through those 5 workshops. So those of you who attended the workshops last year will know that we had the students who came through to help develop and refresh the Leeds by Example website, which is now live, and we felt that format actually worked really well through the workshop because those that work was able to have set sort of 5 different sessions. We worked through it, we had an end product, it felt more productive than previous years of workshops, so we've taken that idea forward. This time round, obviously set the scene for communities engagement, work through the different sessions, come forward with a plan, identifying roles and responsibilities within those attending the workshops, and Climate and Green Space, Energy and Green Spaces team will take forward those ideas and work with them, potentially linking in again with students or some other partnerships. The rest of the workshops will be an update on the work and making sure we have feedback throughout from communities who often feel those challenges and see if it's appropriate what we're doing. And by the time we get through to the end of the workshop, we should be able to have an end product and feedback from communities who've been part of the workshop, how that's helped them in terms of addressing climate change within their communities, has it broken down the challenges, has it improved relationships within the communities, and in that sense, that's when it will link back in with the main committee final meeting. So I appreciate it's been kept coming forward to this particular session because there is still room. It's not been published publicly yet, so there is room, as mentioned from the previous item. I can weave in there the Climate Commission coming back in the forward plan, as we've just spoken about, so I can fit that into there as well. But if there's any, I know some of you were here in the March meeting, if there's any obvious gaps missing or any questions on particular topics you'd like to bring forward, then so you're more than happy to accept suggestions.
Thank you, Rachel. So just before I bring Councillor Hart-Brooke in, did a press release go out about Leeds by Example? I can't remember.
There hasn't been a press release as of yet. What we've done is, because the comms and engagement plan, how it worked, would have exceeded when the students were part of our things, well, part of obviously working with us with how the comms would work with a timeline. So what we've done is at the moment, we wanted to make sure it soft launched and just sort of made sure it ran a couple of weeks to see that it was all okay and that. And then we're going to tie in with the usual corporate links, so through the likes of LinkedIn and other social media, internally having it push out through the Insight channels. There might not be a specific press release, but then we're hoping the likes of Leeds Climate Commission, Climate Action Leeds can actually start to endorse it through their methods as well. So not necessarily piggybacking on in that sense, but making sure it's accessible to everybody rather than just through a corporate press release that might not be of interest to some people.
That will be good, because I'm sure we'd like to share it too, particularly those of us who spent the year working on it. I think it's a great achievement for the work of the workshop. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hart-Brooke.
Thank you. It was just a quick one on the waste element. It'd be really good when we discuss that in November if we can have an update as to where we are with food waste collections and trials and potential rollout, because again it's one of those topics, when we talk about engaging communities, it's one of those things that keeps coming up and up and up, and so I've got a new estate in Carlton, Strawberry Fields, that's been built, and at the moment I'm at a bit of an impasse because I've been told I can't have brown bins because the review's underway, but I've asked John Wilmer 3 times when what the timetable is, and haven't got an answer to understand that I can go back to residents and say you'll get your brown bins here because the review's here and here and here. So it's just understanding the critical path for that.
Okay, I noted you writing that down, Rachel, so we'll stick that on. Councillor Dresser and then Stables.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible, obviously I'm new to this committee and new to the council, can going back, say, 3 or 4 meetings, if you send me any all the packs or all documents that have been, so I can get up to speed of what's been going on in the last 6 months, really, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, all of that information is online, so we can send you a link to where it's all been published, and then you can go back through them. Okay, super. Thank you. Councillor Stables.
Thank you. One of the things that came up in the conversation earlier was about achievements and around comms on that, and to do with what's been achieved so far in terms of improvements in nature and biodiversity, linked to the increase, the number of trees that have been planted, the changes to the cutting regime and things. It'd be really useful to have like an update, because that again is a question that we're often asked about. Well, we're criticised for in terms of those changes, and the people where we are, we don't see a lot of tree planting because obviously it depends where there's land. But it'll be really useful to get some facts about that we can feed back.
So the bit of work that was referred to by the Climate Commission that we're looking to do with the students from sort of September onwards is linked to biodiversity, and one of the key outputs from that I'm hoping for is that we get a comms plan where there's sort of something that we have each month, so it will be a showcase of a piece of work. So it could be where we've done sort of wildflower meadows, it could be some of the like the rewilding and some of the grass verge challenges that were raised. But it could also be the tree planting, and to just showcase some of the different things. But the idea is that it won't necessarily be everything that we do. It could be, some of the community groups that came last year. And the idea as well is that we get to a point where we've got a map with everything on it, so that you can kind of see all the different layers that are being done by different organisations, and it all starts to be a bit more coherent. So I think that will really help with what you're saying, and I think we can link that back as well to the work we want to do with the community sort of workshop and engagement, so make sure it all ties in together. So I think having some focused resource to help us with that will be really critical.
Sorry,
please do.
Thank you. Just in terms of, I think that would be really good to have some regular comms going out on it. I think it's really important that we do that. I just wondered if we're measuring any of it, though, in terms of biodiversity, if we've got actual measurements that we can share.
So we've got measurements in terms of space, so in terms of hectares and things, but what happens, so if it's an official biodiversity net gains site, of which there are quite a few now, they have to do like a baseline assessment, and then at set points during the process they have to do further assessments, so ecological measurement and things like that. So as we go over time, because you have to manage a biodiversity net gain site for 30 years, so over time we will get that, but it might not necessarily be 12 months that you'll see the change, it might be 5 years, but we can certainly provide sort of a list of the sites and what stage they're at and when we'll get that first sort of review process and things, so I'm happy to share all of that.
And also just a thought in terms of sort of specifics in terms of, what people would love to see is things like, there's, 20% more butterflies in Roundhay Bark as a result of the work that's been going on. So I know there's citizens' science projects going on around, and so the question is whether we can link in with those and gather that information as well. So, for example, in Boston Spa, we're the Green Group's taking part in a citizens' science project on butterflies transit walk this year. So that information will be being gathered, but I'm sure there is lots of things like that around the city that if we could bring that in as well and say, as a result of this and this that's been done, actually we've seen an increase in butterflies, an increase in these birds, these have started to breed, just sort of more really specific stuff that engages people, residents, because that's what they like to see, isn't it?
So at places like Lotherton and Tropical World, we do that as part of our zoo conservation in Roundhay Park and obviously Lotherton Estate, where the zookeepers actually undertake that and report, and we do share that on our social media for those specific sites. I think you can't necessarily jump to a conclusion after 1 year, because obviously some years are better for butterflies for different weather conditions and things, but there is that trend data, and we're really closely linked in with the Butterfly Conservation Trust as well, and they've done a lot of work on wild spaces outside of our kind of bigger parks in some of our community parks. So all of that we will capture within and look how we can best present it. But yeah, I think the more we can make it come to life for people, the better.
Thank you. And can you make a note, Rachel, that will be good to be part of the presentation when we discuss biodiversity, so we've got that data with the caveat that it isn't always as easy to produce as it might at first appear, but that we do have what is measurable and what we have, so that we can have a discussion as a committee around that. Yeah, do you want to come back in?
It's about something else, actually, I've just thought about. So the other thing that I don't think's been mentioned is about our rivers. So this is a really hot topic for residents, is about, obviously, the state of our rivers, and I just feel it ought to be included in our programme somewhere.
I think we can include it maybe under that biodiversity one. I think quite a lot of the time we have less direct influence on it. So sometimes it's more about how we work with partners like Yorkshire Water, where we've had specific issues. It's more about how we link in rather than what we can directly do, I suppose, whereas with the biodiversity, the other parts of it we can directly influence, but we can certainly bring it up. And again, we do, at Tropical World, we do specific river monitoring in terms of the health of the rivers and things, so that's part of their conservation work that they undertake, so again, we can bring that.
Can I just ask on that, is there anything specific that you were wanting to tease out that we could maybe look to get information on?
So yeah, I'm thinking Yorkshire Water. I'm thinking, you know, we ought to bring Yorkshire Water back in. I know they came in, was it last year? I've certainly been to one of these meetings that I've been at. But I think, you know, we need to keep putting pressure on them, because clearly things aren't improving in terms of the state of our rivers. And I just feel as a body, we ought to be putting pressure on them. So by bringing them in and asking them questions and, you know, making them accountable, we as a councillor, putting pressure on them.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. And also, one thing that I thought of is I'm aware of organisations that operate in my ward that are doing river monitoring, and I don't know if anybody else is. There must be all over the city. Whether we can invite them to an open forum session and hear their voice too. I can certainly invite, you know, our local organisation, but if anybody else has contacts, I think that might be a really interesting thing to feed into that discussion. Sorry, I thought I'd nodded. Yeah.
Sorry. Also, just maybe the Environment Agency. Can we get the Environment Agency as well as part of that conversation? Because that's the other part, isn't it? You know, about what they're doing to improve it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Useful suggestions. Councillor Hart-Brooke.
Really just building on that, I think what you were saying, that there is a lot of good stuff done by various community groups and sometimes even by individuals, and understanding what is being done in some pockets of the city and the challenges and the opportunities, and basically I would say modelling how to do it, but there's probably good practice that can be shared and inspiration that can be given to you doing this, or some group over here is doing this, why can't we? It is difficult. I mean, in Rothwell we've got a tiny little patch of the A639 that we're trying to turn into a meadow, and by heck it's difficult to get sort of the grass subdued enough that the things that you want to grow do grow. So kind of sharing learnings across projects would be really, really good.
Absolutely, and we have over the years had some brilliant community groups come as part of both open forum, but also we've had sessions, haven't we, where we've invited community groups. I know Councillor Shahzad, you've invited groups along, and a number of others have as well. So yeah, definitely that voice is really important, and as you say, to share that good practice and amplify the work and build connections across the city, I think is really important. Okay, anybody else, anything you would like to see that we haven't mentioned? Okay, well, everybody's going to be really happy with us. Toby's going to be really happy with us, because we had to be out of here at an absolute hard stop of 4 o'clock for another meeting, and you're all going to be happy because you've gained some time. So thank you for your questions, for your comments. We've made a note of all the actions that we need to take, and we will make sure they are done. and I will see you all on the 14th of September here at 2 o'clock. So thank you.